no, this is not clickbait. I actually got to play a game with the legend, former world champion Garry Kasparov. It was a simul in West Palm Beach, and typically when Gary's doing simuls, he doesn't allow masters to play, but also typically he's playing 30 players. In this simul, we got 30 minutes, he got 20, and he was only facing 5 players. And as I am looking to my left, I find that, well, all of my teammates, if you will, combined rating is about 2,500. So I knew from giving simuls personally, where playing against 12 to 15, say 1,600 to 1,800 players, that can be tough. But you've got 1 or 2 easy games. I knew I was going to be able to play a heads-up game with the original boss pretty quickly. And I was very excited. I did a lot of preparation. And let's get to the actual game and see how this turned out. And we're going to get a direct lesson in master preparation and the King's Indian defense in this game. Gary had white, and I said to myself, you know what? I wanted to play aggressively. I wanted to try to go after him if I could. And yeah, definitely did not get far. And some people would be like, well, why didn't you play the Janowski stuff, your aggressive Queen's Gambit decline? You know, I can play a lot of different things, and you got to go with your mood. And my mood was, I want to go after Kasparov. And you have to have a game plan and a mindset when going into a game and playing a much better player. So I stayed to my mindset, and gotta say, I had a number of different lines that I was thinking about. Say, I spent the majority of my preparation preparing for 1e4, but Kasparov, he's somebody who could hit with both hands in his entire career. He can play e4 or d4 just as well. And in recent years, as he's played in rapid and blitz events in St. Louis, he's typically leaned more towards playing d4. So that should have been an indicator that I needed to spend more time there, but honestly, I think it was just kind of random. He alternated on the boards. He made his first move on mine, so he just chose d4. And when looking at d4 with the King's Indian, he played in his career the classical the majority of the time. Secondary was the same-ish. He had a number of fianchetto games and only one game with the dreaded h3. So this was not exactly a high priority for me to study in my preparation. I looked at it and I had the structural ideas in mind, but that's not enough. Because at, I would say, IM plus level, if you make even one micro error, a misunderstanding in the structure, and it's what I define as a memory marker in my chessable text, you're done. And that's it, as we'll see. And this is already a critical position. I know from experience that white wants to play g4 in these lines because the typical play when the center is locked for black, black wants to play f5 to get counterplay. But the h3 system is designed to direct prophylaxis, I should say, against the standard f5 break. And I knew the general idea. And this is why it's so important with critical lines to train them on a regular basis. If you're going to play an opening like the King's Indian, an aggressive opening, or the Knight Or for something that is razor sharp, you must train it on a regular basis until you have full mastery and instant recall. Otherwise, what happened to me in this game will definitely happen to you as well. So I played a very natural looking move, a5, with the idea of going knight a6 and knight c5 at some point. And The general idea of what I knew to do was eventually go a4 after c6 and c takes d5. I've got a knight on c5, and when they play g4, we abandon f5 and go for h5. Now, I knew that was the general theme, so let's see my actual preparation. It wasn't a5, it's knight a6, and this is more precise. And we'll see why very quickly here, because after g4, knight c5 puts immediate pressure on the e-pawn, and this is going to cause a concession. White doesn't want to capture at this moment on c5, because in this kind of scenario, now black's got an easy day. Knight e8, knight d6, and f5 is definitely in the cards, as well as potentially b5. The knight is a monster on d6. So after knight c5, we'll either have queen c2 or the main line f3. If queen c2, I'm going with the general theme here. And the typical move, b4, doesn't work because we've got c takes d5, and if, say, for instance, b takes c5, d4, and black has excellent play and white's king will never find safety. So the main line in this position, f3, and it's this one move, this one idea, saving time on a5, knight a6, knight c5 immediately to place pressure, which causes this defensive move, and this changes everything. Because this now is the prep. a4, restricting the pawn structure and encouraging white to keep the king in the center. h5, critical moment. And say, for instance, h4. And this is what I had in my notes. We've stunted the attack for white, and we're looking at the potential of playing with a b-pawn. The engine gives white, a quarter of a pawn edge or so in this type of position, but this is what you sign up for when you play the King's Indian. You're looking for tension and dynamic play. So a little taste and prep for you. Now, let's see how quickly this one went wrong. a5, g4, and it looks very similar. g2, c6, and I'm going through the motions of what I thought was correct. And then right here, I realized that knight c5 doesn't do anything. And in fact, white might just time for the appropriate moment to capture on c5, and then he's got a protected pass pawn forever. So I think a little bit, play bishop d7, and I realized that this is either going to be really good or really bad at this moment. I didn't know yet. It's like, okay, I guess this is some weird move order that he used or something, so I'm on my own playing against Kasparov at this point. And Gary stopped at my board and he spent 3 minutes. And this is quite a big time investment in a simul when you started with 20 minutes. And it's something that, I started playing chess in 2003, so I can remember vividly the commentary in super tournaments when Kasparov was still actively competing. He retired in 2005. And there was 2 things that commentators used to go nuts about when he would do it in games. The big one was if he took his watch off during the game and put it beside the board, that means you're wasting my time. Just, Gary was never one to not show emotions at the board or irritation. But, to each their own. Everyone has different styles in that way. But the other thing that he would do is the corkscrew. When you make your move, it's that twist, that little twist. And after 3 minutes of thought, he plays bishop b5, and he did the corkscrew. And that's when I realized I had seriously messed up. And it's already pretty much over. Now, this is the thing you need to see for the rest of the game. In order to have a successful f5 break at some point, you need the bishop in the King's Indian. So trading it off, you're signing up for despair. The center is locked, so my play should be on the queen side. The problem with this position is I can't really trade knights, and I'm left with a bishop that's going to be out of the game forever. So from a technical standpoint, the game's already done. So let's see me struggle a bit and marvel at the technique of Kasparov. Knight e8, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem so bad. And he thinks a little bit more here. And if you're a pause your video type of person to try to find the best continuation, you know white's better. Try to find best play here, because I'll be honest, I thought I was fine. And I thought, I'm going to be able to get in b5 at some point and get some counterplay on the queen side, which is needed. Nope. Well, Kasparov played bishop takes d7. And after queen takes, did you find the strongest continuation? With knight a4. And now I began to realize that absolutely everything had gone wrong. And I've got to start making concessions. Now, if I play a move like queen d8, he can just play knight b6, castle, put the rooks on the c-file, and I never get counterplay. So I chose the more active move, queen b5. You always got to provide your opponent more opportunities to go wrong, even if they're not. Knight b6. And this is a good old-fashioned positional squeeze here. And he goes, hey, you've only got one active piece. I offer to treaty with you. Would you like to trade your only active piece? And I realized pretty quickly here that I don't need to trade, so, but the man's insistent. I was hoping that potentially I could go knight c5 and cut off the knight, but this is one of the only times in the game I really had to think, and everything that I saw is just losing for black. Let's say, for instance, knight c5 was my initial intention, and after queen takes, pawn takes, I had calculated over the board, and this will show an error in calculation that I had, that if bishop takes, rook c1, and the c-pawn was lost. But actually, I didn't go far enough here. Black had rook d6 and has reasonable play. But the actual problem with this, which Gary undoubtedly would have found, is you don't need to do anything with white. White has everything. So I'm just going to play king d2, and as black is still suffering with a terrible bishop and pieces that aren't doing anything or active, he's just going to improve the position and break me in half. So that would have been fun. Kind of similar to what happened in the main game. You'll enjoy it. So I decided to trade queens. And I go, okay, well, at least I'm not going to let him just invade on the c-file. Let's hunker down and be solid. And potentially I can go knight b5, knight d4. And if I can get the knight to d4, I'm going to have some active play. So I've got an active plan. What do you think he did? No, sir. No activity. You're just going to suffer. This is what it's like. I fancy myself as a reasonable player, as a low-grade master, but I was feeling the strength in this game. One mistake. That's all it takes. And then the rest of it's down here. Knight c5. I'm like, maybe there's hope for a cheapo. And, I was thinking, God, it's a simul. Maybe he'll get in a little bit of a rush here, like bishop takes, and then plays a natural move like rook hc1. I had this idea like knight e6 because of the pin, and potentially I can sack a pawn, but my knight will get to a great square, and it's like, you dream, sir. You dream. That's all you have. Kasparov simply plays rook a3. No counterplay. Enjoy the suffering. So I'm like, oh, my bishop's terrible. So let's try to get the bishop in the game. Bishop f6. If I can play bishop h4, then maybe I can trade off this bishop and at least I've made use of him in some way. No. You get none. You get nothing. So bishop e7, at least I'm covering d6 now. So g5, I'm like, an active move. I can do something. But it just assures that I'm never going to have any actual counterplay. So I go rook f7. And around this point, I'm under 5 minutes. And yeah, so it's hurry up chess. And I knew that my only chance was holding on to try to get to a point if he got low on time as well. And as we reached the end of the game, he had about a minute and a half as I was in a dead loss position. And knight c4 kicks it off, and I'm tired of sitting passively. I've got to do something. So I play b5 because I'm going to lose something anyway. And in true Kasparov fashion, he finds the best liquidation with knight takes d6. And after takes, again, best liquidation, no tricks. And there's really just nothing doing here. I have the potential maybe to play knight takes d5, and maybe the f2 pawn gets weak. So he's just like, no. It's like, okay, well, maybe I can finally get rid of this crappy bishop. But the pawns, he runs. He just keeps running. What can you do? And I mean, the technique from start to finish from Garry was a really high-quality positional game. And I liked the way he dissipated the pressure here. Rook g1. If you don't take the knight, knight f5 or knight h5 will be a problem. And if you do take the knight, I can just simply defend the pawn with the rook. I don't want to play f3 or make a king move, as I want the rook involved in the attack. So he simply brings the rook over, and on f3, I decided it's a good time to resign, because can't stop, won't stop the pawn on the b file. And gotta say, it was an absolute privilege to play against Kasparov, and it's been a good year of chess for me. We had the Crypto Cup in Miami and got to see a lot of the best players in the world in person, and getting to play a game against Kasparov. My chess life just seems to get better and better, and I sincerely appreciate the opportunity that was given to me to play against the legendary Garry Kasparov.